Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hope you guys have been having a fantastic Wednesday so far as we're making our way through the work week and getting on through it. In this video, we're going to continue to break down what is going on right now with our upper level low that's kind of just swirling around out here in the southeast, creating a lot of storms for our evening. Really all day today, it's been really stormy across portions of the southeast, Florida, Georgia. Alabama has experienced, areas of Alabama, especially in and around Birmingham, have experienced a little bit of flooding. And, the Carolinas is getting hit as we speak this evening. And that will continue to be the case as we move through the overnight hours. But really in this video, we're going to start to focus on every single severe weather event in front of us. And we have multiple to talk about. We're going to get as detailed as we can about each one. I'm expecting severe weather tomorrow. Watching tomorrow night into Friday morning, there might be some tornadoes we need to watch for an overnight threat across areas of the deep south. We'll talk about that. Severe weather expected in general during the day. Friday, Saturday might take a little bit of a break for a day, and then our eyes are honestly focused on early next week where a big time powerful upper trough digs down and we have the chance to have a big time moisture return. So we're going to talk about everything we know and get detailed about it. If you guys have not subscribed, definitely consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Hit me up on my social media links over here. It's a great way to stay up to date. Obviously, I can't make a video every hour, so it's a great way to stay up to date with the latest and greatest. And if you guys got anything that I can pray about, please put it in the comments below. It doesn't just give me an opportunity to pray over, it gives others an opportunity to do so too. So let's look out for one another, and as always, glorify God doing it. So let's get rolling here. We're going to look at water vapor, and obviously there's a big time eyesore on what you're looking at here, and that is this thing right here. You see how it's swirling? The darker colors, like more of the black colors, that is drier air. The more whiter colors you see is higher water vapor content, which means you got more moist air in general. And you see the swirl right here. That is our upper level low. It's firing off convection all around it. Not very, very far around it, but, relatively close to this low pressure. And then you're obviously getting convection in and around this upper level low. These tend to bring their own systems. They can bring snow. They bring severe weather like it's doing today. They can bring flooding like it's doing today. And in and around it, it brings its own little low-level jet. It literally but it brings its own weather with it. It's really crazy. I love tracking these things, and they always look really cool on satellite here. But convection firing up in the Carolinas will continue to do so overnight, and it looks like a lot of the storm action is starting to move off the eastern shoreline of the peninsula of Florida. So we'll deal with a little bit of storms overnight. And really, we still have this marginal and slight risk up all the way up through about Thursday morning around 6, 7 a.m. tomorrow, and then we move on to the next day, which will be our day 2 outlook, which we'll talk about here in a second. So we're still dealing with some nasty weather, and we'll take a look at the HRRR model, what's going on between, and really we need to start at around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As you can tell, storms will continue to fire up even later this evening. The Midlands of South Carolina, I expect some rounds of storms to continue to move through the later evening hours, and these will continue to pivot through. Rain expected overnight for a lot of North Carolina. Not everybody, but some areas could see some small hail, definitely some heavier downpours. And then we'll watch for some severe weather, maybe waking up tomorrow morning across this section of Virginia and North Carolina, but I don't expect this to be a big deal at all. So let's focus our focus on that day 2 threat, which extends from tomorrow morning through Friday morning, and we're really watching tomorrow night. But there's a big time slight risk, right? But you look at the tornado risk, and it's really just for down here. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But the reason is you're going to have a lot of surface-based convection here way up here. You're going to have dew points probably in the 40s and 50s. You're not going to have a lot of juice in the atmosphere in this slight risk up here. But you're going to have an isolated hail threat where there's favorable mid-level lapse rates, and you're probably going to have a lot more cold air in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which normally brings that more of a hail threat in these regions. So we need to watch out here, and for sure. And actually, I had this on the wind threat, but same thing, hail threat in this entire area. And though there's a wind threat in these isolated areas where you could have a 15% risk of damaging winds occurring in these small areas, but the hail threat's actually larger. It extends throughout this entire slight risk. In fact, that is probably the bigger reason why you have a slight risk extended all the way back here into Oklahoma and northeast Texas into far southwest Arkansas. So we watched that, then we watched that tornado threat in the bayou of Louisiana. We're going to talk about that here. So going forward, this is what's going on. This upper level low moves on through, finally meanders, weakens, gets lost in the flow of things. And then this is our next upper trough or upper level low that digs through here. It's just an upper trough that digs, and it starts to advect moist air into this region right here, into western areas of the deep south and mid south. So you get that moist air down here, down here in the overnight hours tomorrow night and the Friday morning. You're probably going to have enough moist air to add to these other thermodynamics and kinematics in place, which is that wind energy, to create a small scale tornado risk. So let's go on and look at the HRRR model and what I'm talking about here. So we'll start this off by about 8 p.m. tonight. We'll keep this rolling here. Here comes our next upper trough, our low pressure firing up across the south central U.S. This continues to move through. You see the big explosive area of precipitation that develops here in Kansas. There's enough cold air on top of this storm to actually have some wet snow here in Kansas. So we'll be interested in maybe a little bit of snow up here. Not a full-fledged snowstorm by any means, but definitely something to watch for. But as we're getting into, really you don't start to see any storm developing until later tomorrow afternoon across Oklahoma, and this slight risk right here. Oklahoma City, watch out. And then right along the low pressure, like I said, dew points in the 40s and 50s. These are definitely going to be what we call cold core storms. So you're going to have a hail threat probably in and around Oklahoma City. You know, we're going to have hail the size of baseballs. I hope not. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy like that, but it's something to watch out for. These are going to probably be some hailers, so watch out for this. We're getting into, you know, the later evening hours tomorrow, pushing close to midnight for the south central U.S., and then you start to watch this tail down here. You get a low-level jet that starts ramping up here. This starts to get a fetch of some higher moisture content in these areas, and we keep going. And all these storms down here in the bayou near Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and New Orleans, Louisiana, you start to have a tornado risk down here with any of these storms that develop here. So if you're in southern sections of Louisiana, you need to watch out for a tornado threat overnight. These can be sneaky. And then we're starting to get about 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. And then we start, you know, to get this a little bit more east. And then we start talking about the risk for day 3. But it's something we need to watch out for sure. And as I'm talking about these cold core setups, and let's see if we can get this rolling here. It's moving a little slow for me. We're getting into tomorrow afternoon hours. You notice that around right here is when the storms start to pop up here, and this is where for around 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, storms start to develop into here. But you notice dew points are in the 50s, so a lot of surface-based elevation. You're basically not going to get a big-time tornado outbreak or tornadoes in this kind of setup up here. You're really not. You don't have a lot of the kinematics and thermodynamics meeting and creating an environment for tornadoes. But you notice this fetch of low-level moisture starting to move into Texas. This is that what we call a dang, I'm brain farting here. Basically just a wedge of more moist air moving through here, a moist sector. I don't know, I've said that many times talking about severe weather, but I'm just brain farting here a little bit. But you get a little bit of a moist sector, which always builds ahead of the cold front. And it's basically a warm front, the more warm front that builds that moist air into these areas. And as we're getting into the overnight hours, you have dew points surging into the 60s, close to 70 down here, which is an element for that severe weather. You also add that with a little bit of CAPE down here in response, those increasing dew points, and you're starting to get CAPE up here. But notice, you know, you don't have a lot of other thermodynamics in place, like them favorable dew points, low-level jets, weaker, really close to that area of low pressure. But then we're getting into the overnight hours tomorrow, and look at the CAPE values pushing over 1,000 joules per kilogram in this area in general, and that is enough CAPE, convective energy, to mix in with all those other dynamics in play here. So we watch that for sure. And then you have that low-level jet that we always watch. These are, you know, the 3 or 4 big things that you watch when you're trying to figure out a system, especially long range. But here we go. Low-level jet starts to fire up around here in the middle of the night. I'm talking about midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, Friday morning. Low-level jet pushing 40, 50, 60 knots in this region with those dew points in place that are pretty high, a lot of moist air. You know, a little bit of kinematics in place. The convective energy in place. You're going to have a tornado threat here, especially. Not to ignore the severe weather threat over here, because it's going to be here too. Damaging winds And then the isolated hail threats are going to be a risk, but you always pay a little bit more attention than that tornado threat down there. And then we move to day 3, which is for our Friday morning and the Saturday morning. What's going to happen with this? Well, we can look in the long-range HRRR model. It goes all the way out until about early afternoon hours, probably around midday Friday. So we'll go on and fast forward this, and then you can see the system starting to churn up. Of course, we're still in the day 2 risk area, but as we get into 12Z Friday, that's when we start to get into that day 3 range. So really, this risk is really, especially the slight risk right here, which includes New Orleans, Mobile. This is really for that the morning time frame into the early afternoon hours. When you start getting to the marginal risk over here and up here, that's maybe more so for the afternoon hours. But this slight risk, we're going to have a rocky morning across areas of the Gulf Coast, the southern sections of the Deep South, waking up Friday morning. I really think that's when the convection and the tornado threat is going to be the worst, and the severe weather in general is going to be the worst. And that's in response to this same upper trough that's going to promote severe weather for your Thursday is going to be the same thing that promotes severe weather for your Friday. And you're getting into, 9, 10 a.m., and you got nasty weather moving through Alabama. But down here, where there's better thermodynamics like the Cape, convective energy is probably the highest down here. You also have much better surface moisture in place down here, pushing 60s to 70s in dew points. You're going to have an isolated tornado threat down here. But I think most of the convection will stay. I think you're going to have rotating updrafts, but I think you're going to have a lot of you're going to see a lot of movement in the clouds in this region. But I have a feeling a lot of it won't actually turn into all-out tornadoes, but I think 1 or 2 will have a chance to do so too. You're basically going to see a lot of scary-looking clouds as you're waking up Friday morning across southern sections of Alabama and Mississippi, and then the far western areas of the Panhandle of Florida. But this will continue to move through, and there'll be an ongoing tornado threat probably down here as you're getting into about your midday time frame, and there'll be severe weather ongoing. All these storms will have a chance to produce probably some small hail and damaging winds, but this is as far out as the HRRR model goes, which is to about 2 p.m., 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for your Friday. So we can obviously see these evolving a lot better on the short range models. This is that upper trough, that low pressure shooting through here. This is just your classic look for a small to medium scale severe weather event. So we continue to watch that. But, you look at the dew points that really eject itself across the Deep South in response to this upper trough, yanking that moisture out the Gulf. And you have this moving, ongoing, easternly moving moist sector like you always see across the Deep South with severe weather events. And as you're waking up Friday morning, it's going to be very moist down here in the Deep South into the early afternoon hours before a little bit more dry air filters in behind it, like it always is the case with severe weather threats in the Deep South. And then you're looking at the convective elements with this system. You're probably going to have Cape values, down here pushing probably that 1,800, 2,000 joules per kilogram. Watch out. That's when you start to get in that danger category to really can promote a tornado threat down here. So I really think we're going to have some nasty weather waking up Friday morning into the early afternoon hours down here as far as that tornado threat. It's going to be something we need to watch out for. And then that low-level jet's obviously going to ramp up here. You're going to have a small scale, not a huge, expansive, large low-level jet, but an isolated area that matches well to those other thermodynamics you need of a 40 to 50, maybe 60 knot low-level jet in response to this low pressure just to its northwest, well off to the northwest. So the next thing we talk about is, we're not going to talk about this much because this is actually going to be related to the system that's going to cause severe weather the next 2 days. But the thing is by then, this is probably going to be just a line of storms, probably Saturday morning, I really think, for the far eastern areas of the Carolinas. And I think the biggest threat with this, and it says this in the discussion below this down here, is damaging winds. I don't think you're going to have any tornadoes or anything, but this is probably going to be mainly for Saturday morning. It's going to be kind of like last Saturday morning across the eastern Carolinas, where you're going to have probably a line of storms that moves through. How intense is it going to be? There's still some questions. We're not in short range with this yet, but it's something to watch. But we're getting into day 5. Likely going to be our only break. Our Sunday is going to be our break day between all this severe weather. But then day 6, this is when it gets dangerous. You got that 15% risk, which is basically a slight risk at day 6. And then day 7, you basically have a slight level 2 out of 5 risk for your day 7. This is for your Monday morning into Wednesday morning. The time frame I just showed previously for day 6 is Monday morning into Tuesday morning. And day 8, predictability too low, but I bet you they're going to introduce a 15% risk a little bit further east, as basically this massive upper trough basically in general scoots more east. So we'll talk about what we do know. What we do know is, here it comes, right? This is the system that's going to promote severe weather over the next 3 days. This moves through, and then this is a big dog upper trough that moves into the south central U.S. and then begins to eject itself across the middle of the country. How does it evolve? We're just not sure. But as it does, we'll stop this for, I don't know, Monday afternoon. This is Monday evening. This is yanking suddenly maybe a southwest south flow right here and pulling that moist air from the south, especially the Gulf of Mexico. Higher dew points surging, expansive moist sector probably surging pretty far north, much further north than the events that are going to be happening over the next 48 to 72 hours. Much bigger, expansive dew point, and hopefully I got the next time frame. And you can see this here, bigger, expansive, moist sector popping up here, and this is stopping it for about Monday afternoon. You got dew points widespread down here in eastern Texas, in the 60s, pushing 70 in Louisiana. And then you see this dry line where you got dew points in the 20s in central Texas, dew points in the 60s and 70s in eastern Texas. There's going to be a dry line set up, I think, which tells me that this is going to be a big-time hail threat. There's going to be a tornado threat also, definitely. But if you're going to see some of these CAPE values that are already showing up on the global models, which I'm about to show you, pushing 1,000, 2,000, 2,500 joules per kilogram CAPE, you're going to have a hail threat with this. And I honestly think the surface temperatures are going to rise into the 80s in these regions. So this is going to be your classic almost April to May kind of setup. But the moist sector in general continues to build over the next day. And then you get into Tuesday, this moist sector shifts into maybe areas of Mississippi, Alabama. And then you're going to have severe weather probably in this area as you're getting into Tuesday, as you have dew points up above 60 degrees all the way into the Ohio Valley. So you keep this going, you're getting into Wednesday, and you know the moist sector continues to climb into the southeast. So I think there will be severe weather even into Thursday. So this is going to be definitely something to watch. I think this is honestly going to be our first outbreak of the year. But look at these CAPE values next Monday, of next week, which is March, what is that, March 21st? CAPE values pushing well over 2,000 joules per kilogram ahead of this dry line. You keep this moving here, and then you're getting into your Tuesday afternoon, next Tuesday afternoon, an even larger area of higher convective values, widespread over 2,000 joules per kilogram values showing up here in Louisiana and areas of Mississippi. This is dangerous. Even some high CAPE showing up in Alabama. So you mash that with all this wind energy, which you got this low-level jet pushing 60 to 80, 90 knots across Dallas, Texas, for example, and northeast Texas. Low-level kinematics in place. This low-level wind field is going to be insane, and this mid-level jet to mix with this is also going to be insane, where you have the favorable kinematics. Kinematics will definitely, there will be no shortage of kinematics and thermodynamics with this setup coming up. There's also always going to be other factors, but it's hard to get super detailed about this system early next week until we get into about Friday and Saturday. We start to get into the deep short range model guidance of what's going to happen with this system. That's when you're going to start to see if the National Weather Service is going to pull the trigger on enhanced, moderate, and who knows, maybe even high risk for this setup. But I think this does have a dangerous look to it. We'll continue to monitor it, and we'll continue to talk about it because it warrants our attention for sure. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a great and safe evening.